morning, Southwood. If you will, please rise in body or spirit as we sing our opening tune, Rejoice, You Pure in Heart.
Into a solo, we'll take it. Good morning. Good morning, church. Hi, it's me, Kristen. Michael's not here because he's in the Grand Canyon with Catherine, and they were originally planning on doing their long hike today, but he texted me yesterday, and they are doing that tomorrow. I'm assuming the weather forecast was more interesting for tomorrow's hike. And he'd also like to remind you that you can still donate to Church World Service to help fight hunger here in our community and all around the world. So you can look at the Crop Walk website, or you can write a check to the church and put Crop Walk in your memo line, and we'll take care of that. First, before we do announcements, we're going to have Marlene come up for your virtual hug. And I'm going to remind you that our CCS Worship Cast license is, do you guys know it? You win a gold star, 11379. So that's what allows us to push this out onto YouTube and for everyone to join us from home. Marlene?
Good morning, Southwood and friends. Here's your virtual hug.
All right, and we do have a plethora of announcements today. We're going to start with Barb.
Good morning. In case you don't know me, I'm Barb Carell, and I am currently serving as president of the Southwood Church Council. And we have an important event coming up in 2 weeks that we would like to invite each and every one of you to attend right after church. It is going to be our annual meeting where we discuss the business of the church that needs the attention of the entire congregation, not just the council. During that meeting, we will elect council members and conference delegates. We will be seeking to amend the church bylaws. We would like to, let's start with this. $1,000 isn't $1,000 anymore, right? And the council is in our bylaws entitled to decide to spend $1,000 currently for something that needs to be done in the church. And so we are asking the congregation to increase that amount to $5,000 that can be spent at the council's discretion.
Without having to get
without having to have another congregational meeting, which requires a 2-week notice, and yeah, so that's right. It's for you. Yes. Okay. And let's see. Then we are also we will be asking to authorize 2 expenditures. One is, and we will get into the numbers at the meeting, but one is to remove the tree that's straight out there that I can almost see that is threatening to fall on our cars and on our parking lot. So we have to authorize that expenditure. And also we are going to discuss having a fund set aside and already voted to be spent for replacing the 2 air conditioners in the sanctuary, because they're going to have to be replaced sometime before too long. And again, we'd like to not have to have the air conditioners go out and then have a meeting announced and then wait 2 weeks. And so we're going to be asking to authorize that amount. So we'll explain all the ins and outs of that day. But I really hope that all of you will stay. And I will tell you that the meeting was originally scheduled for November 13th. And guess what? That was a 12 o'clock Chiefs game. Heaven forbid we do that. So we moved it up to the 6th. So hope to see you then. Thank you.
While Susan's coming up, I will. Just wanted to say that we on Facebook this week, I made a post about our 20th anniversary being an open and affirming congregation, and many of you shared that post. And when you share our post, that means more people can see them. So that post was seen by more than 1,000 folks on Facebook, celebrating that such a congregation exists in Eastern Jackson County. And you don't know what you don't know. So when you share that information, you're letting people know that there's a place where they're welcome, where we celebrate that God's love is for everyone. And just a reminder to share our posts when you like what's posted. And also make sure you like and follow our page. Okay? Got it? Good. Okay, Susan.
Good morning. I'm here this morning to share with you about the organization of break time that is associated with Shepherd Center. Break time is for most of us, people over 60. They meet on Tuesdays from 10 o'clock until 2. They play games, they paint, they color, we do chair exercises, we visit, we sing. Then we have a wonderful lunch that is furnished to us by Elliot's Place, and Elliot's Place is an assisted living here in Raytown, and they have fabulous cooks. I know because I volunteered in the office shelter, Shepherd's office, behind the cooks, and it's pretty hard to sit back there when they're making rolls. It is, as I said, it's held on Tuesday morning from 10 to 2. Anybody over 60, us young ones, is welcome to come. There is an elevator for you to get downstairs. You do not have to go down the steps. And you are welcome to drop off someone that you might know that would like to come and have some companionship and some company for the day, and come back and pick them up. That we are almost on a one-to-one basis, a volunteer plus a client, so we can help them do anything they need to do. We'd like for you all to come and socialize and visit and get to know the people who are there and have a good time and have a good lunch. And I've saved the best to last. It's free. It's on Shepherd Center is sponsoring this. I have some flyers I will put in the back. I would like for you to read them and consider just coming once and see what kind of fun you can have. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's at what used to be the Methodist Church at 51st and Blue Ridge Boulevard. Do you know where that is?
I know where 51st and Blue Ridge Boulevard.
Well, there's a church there on the corner. There was a church. But we meet in the basement, and there is an elevator to take you to the... There is a basement. We meet in the basement, and the elevator will take you to the basement. There will be a lady at the back door to escort you downstairs so you don't have to wander around aimlessly not knowing where you're going.
Good morning. Fall workday will be on November the 5th at 9 o'clock. We'll be working inside and out, so if we do have inclement weather, there will be things to do inside. So if you got a little bit of time, come on down. All help is needed and appreciated. Thank you.
As Christy comes up, I want to remind you that you can sign up for Advent devotional booklets. You can sign up on our Facebook members post, or in real life person, you can sign up on the list that's out there. The booklet this year is called Light Shines in the Darkness, and our worship ministry team will be purchasing that for those of you who would like one.
Hi, I'm Christy Littleton, and I'm head of the mission team. And I just wanted to tell you that we went to the migrant workers place on Monday. I can't remember what it's called now. Yeah, the place where they go. And we volunteered. We were going to help distribute, but it was so cold that they, I think, felt sorry for us. There weren't that many people that came because it was so cold and because it was the end of the season. And so we helped. We put rice in bags. We made food bags. We did broke down boxes. It's a lot harder to double bag a grocery bag than it looks in the store. They just whip them in there. Not so much. It's not so much. But anyway, it was really very rewarding and a very good learning experience. We learned a lot. I think one of the things that I will remember or have in my mind is whenever I sit down and eat a piece of fruit, I will think about how many hands touched that fruit before it got to me, because somebody had to pick it. And they don't get paid a lot, and their life is not an easy one. So, but the man that volunteers there, his name was Alan. He loved us. He absolutely loved us. And so he was saying, well, next time you come, you'll have to come earlier, and maybe you can come more than one Monday, because they go every Monday night. So we'll have to volunteer for a couple of Mondays and let other people come, because it was a really good experience. Thank you.
As Claire comes up, I want to tell you guys about an opportunity tomorrow night, Monday, 6:30 p.m. at the Kansas City Public Library on the Plaza in the Truman Forum Auditorium. The Greater Kansas City Interfaith Alliance, of which Pastor Michael is a member, is hosting an in-person event with panelists who work with immigrants and refugees in the Kansas City area, as well as representatives of different faiths in our community, and they're going to be discussing their view about our responsibility toward our new siblings as they make homes here. And you guys, our very own Bill Ingenza is going to be one of those panelists, so you better get out there and support him. Hey!
Hi, good morning. My name's Claire Davis, if you don't know me, and I just got back from Bike and Build. And next Sunday, I will be doing in the sermon slot, giving a presentation and showing pictures from my journey to give a little overview of how it went. So if the sermon is your least favorite part, make sure you're here next Sunday, because it'll be me.
Okay, just one last announcement. I hope Adam is paying attention to how long announcements are going today, so maybe that least favorite part isn't too long. Just kidding, it's gonna be great. Also next Sunday, it is October 30th, which means it's very spooky. So you are invited to wear costumes if you'd like to church on Sunday. You can hear Claire give our least favorite part of church. And then afterward, you can stay for our ministry fair, which will be in Fellowship Hall. And it's just a really good opportunity for you to walk around and see what there is to do in the church, what you can be part of. There will be all the different little teams stationed around with their displays. You can ask questions and see the work that our church does together and see what speaks to you and how you'd like to get involved. And I have 17 more announcements, so hang on. I'm just kidding. That's it for announcements. Okay, let's sing.
Call them as partners in Christ's service, call to ministries of grace.
out front. Take a chance. Oh, thanks. Here comes more. Has any of you ever seen the movie Instant Family? No, have you seen it? No. Perry made me watch it a few weeks ago. She'd been bugging me for a long time to watch it, and it was really good. And it's a movie about a couple, young couple, that decides they want to adopt. And when they do their research, they've discovered that the most difficult children to get adopted are teens. And so they find this teen that they like, and they struggle with her, but they decide that she's someone they want to make a family with, but she's got two little, a brother and a sister, and together the five of them kind of reinvent what a family is, and they have all these wonderful adventures and yada yada. It's a great movie. It's called Instant Family. But it made me think, and I'm a big lover of animals. If you know me, I'm a big lover of animals. Anyone else like animals? Okay. Yes, oh yeah, we all love animals. So I was thinking of some cool families that I've seen with animals that's a little different than what we'd normally see. And if there's a slides coming up behind you, hopefully. There's one here. So this is, does anyone know what that is? So there's a wild boar on the back. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah, it looks like a monkey. It's not. It's in an ape family. It's a macaque. But anyway, this is a baby macaque whose parents had been killed and was crying and struggling, and the keepers that were kind of taking care of them at the zoo hooked him up with this wild boar, and the baby kind of rides on the back of the wild boar just like it would with its mom. Next one. This is an interesting one. So there was a tsunami, a big wave came, and this baby hippo got separated from his family and found a friend in a 130-year-old tortoise, who at first, didn't really, just like the family in Instant Family, first struggled having this, new baby to look after, but eventually they became really good friends, and now they're inseparable. Next slide. This is one of my favorites. This is another macaque. This is a grown-up macaque who has adopted a chicken. This chicken had struggled, in the zoo and was kind of being scared by the other animals and kicked around. So it found a mother figure to take care of it, and it will always run to this macaque when it's in trouble. And the macaque, they actually sleep in they have a hut together while they go sleep, and it's just a wonderful relationship. I think I got another couple. Oh yeah, this is a fun one. Poachers killed this elephant's parents. And so the baby elephant was kind of taken in by a preserve that looks after baby elephants. But I guess they also had some sheep. And this sheep became the mother to this baby elephant. And they spend and hang out together, and the sheep kind of takes care of the baby elephant. All right. Now, next one real quick. Okay, good. Now this one's fun. What's cool about this one is because tigers actually grew up to be actually very mean to a lot of other animals. They're predators. So they'll go out and they could kill and eat baby chimpanzees. And here's a chimpanzee who helps out in this care center for lost and struggling animals. And there he is feeding this little baby tiger, oblivious to the fact that when the tiger grows up, they may not be as good friends. Or maybe, because we got another slide here. This is a lion who has adopted an antelope. The antelope's parents were killed, probably by a lion, and research found them roaming together. The lion takes care of her, protects her from the other lions, and it's just an odd predator-prey relationship as they roam through the jungles, taking care of one another. And one last one. Here's a mother tiger. We talked about mother tigers being kind of generally can be pretty mean and cruel, but here's a mother tiger who's taking care of a bunch of piglets, a bunch of piglets that are nursing and sleeping with this tiger who's their adopted mom, because the Piglet's mother died and was not able to take care of them. So this tiger is doing that for them. And so it's great. We got a lot of fun stories about how, people are taking care, or in this case, animals taking care of other animals who aren't their own or even their own species. And scientists are really kind of confused about how this works and why this happens. But one thing I do want you to know about all these too is that in each one of these scenarios, the mother figure, the parent figure who's taking care of the babies, I talked about some of the problems that the babies had, but each one of these parents had problems as well. So this is a tiger who lost recently its own babies, which is why it was, at least partially considered of taking in these other babies. The lion had also similarly lost its lion cub, do you call it? There you go, lost its lion cub. So I had that urge to do that. And in all these scenarios, we had not just children, babies that needed care, but we had caregivers that also needed to give love to another. And so while it's wonderful when we as people take in others that need help. Anyone heard of like rescue pets? Anyone have any of those? Animals that have maybe been treated poorly or whatever, they're great. It's wonderful to adopt them and take care of them. But it's not just one way. It's not that someone's loving and taking care of someone else, but in return, we get that love of someone and feel that same kind of sense of warmth and comfort that we get of taking care of others and giving love to others. So thanks for joining me. We'll talk maybe a little bit more about this later, but you can go back to your seats or nursery, wherever you want to go. Thanks for coming down.
Good morning. As we center our hearts and minds for prayer, be mindful of your breath. Whether you are here in this sanctuary or at home in the sanctuary of your heart, be mindful of being in this moment. Be mindful of being in community. Breathing in and out. Be mindful of our relationship with creation, with God, and this very gift of life. Oh God, we thank you for last night's sleep and the morning rising on this autumn day. We so enjoy the colors on leaves, giving evidence to the change that is happening around us and in the environment. change happening within each one of us that sometimes goes unnoticed. We confess, God, that sometimes we want change and we want it badly, so much that we try to force outcomes. And we confess that other times we don't want change and we resist. Forgive us when we forget that we are not the center of the universe, and yet we are one unique, beautiful part of all creation. Move us to a deeper trust in you, to see new possibilities through change, to see new relationships and new family formations. This morning, we pray especially for the community of Woolridge, Missouri, who went through the major change as fire swept through their town and the farmland last night. We're thankful for firefighters and first responders, and we pray for the rebuilding of this community, as well as those in our own community who serve and lead. We also lift up this morning the migrant farm families who now are in transition, in change as they head to a new location to pick other fruits and to harvest other vegetables so we have enough to eat. We broaden our prayers to worldwide and lift up those in other countries who are knowing devastation at this time. We especially pray for Ukraine and know that the change occurring there is massive and destructive. We pray for world leaders to draw upon wisdom, to draw upon courage, and to draw upon love to end this devastation. We seek justice and peace. Within our own community of faith, we pray for Pastor Michael and Catherine as they have their walk for the crop ministry tomorrow. We trust in your comforting spirit for Barb Carell and her family following the passing of her mother, Dorothy Crable. And we pray for Lee Waters' father, for Jermaine, for Punky, for Pastor Chris Patterson, for Bob and Ryan's father. And we lift up Avery and Ron, Shannon, James, and all others who might be going through cancer treatments. For all who are ill or injured, those who are hurting mentally, emotionally, or physically, going through changes financially, may we put our trust in you, O God, and seek out your wisdom and your guidance, for it's in you where we have hope and peace. Amen.
A reading from the letter to the church at Rome, chapter 1, verses 18 to 21 from the New International Version of the Bible. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of worlds, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God or never gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. And Romans chapter 12, verse 12 from the King James Version of the Bible. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
I want to be ready. 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 I want to be ready to walk in Jerusalem just like John. I want to be ready. 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 I want to be ready to walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. I want to be ready. 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 I want to be ready to walk in Jerusalem just like John. Oh, I want to be ready. I want to be ready. I want to be ready to walk in Jerusalem just like John. Walk in Jerusalem just like John. To walk in Jerusalem like John.
Unfortunately, unlike a figure skater, I don't have a short program. If things start to drag, I may try to, skip a triple Lutz here and there. Unfortunately, it's all good stuff. Have you paid attention to, or were you aware of, back 5-6 years ago, a podcast called Serial, or the story of Adnan Syed? Have you heard that or followed that at all? He's a Muslim American who, in 1999, as a 17-year-old, was convicted of murdering his girlfriend and went to prison. And the Serial podcast kind of talked about all the problems with that prosecution, from his arrest and investigation and the prosecution and trial and all that kind of stuff, and kind of worked to kind of expose problems with our justice system, but also talk about, whether or not he did it. Anyway, I kind of started listening to it late because back in September, he was actually released from prison. He got one of his appeals was finally granted, and then the prosecutors just now, a couple weeks ago, have decided to drop the charges. So he is free and out. And it started me thinking about, I'd heard about the podcast. I knew it was very famous and viral and at the time, so I thought I'd go check it out. So I started listening to this on my commute to and from work. And I found it was fascinating, but it was also very frustrating because they were trying to figure out what happened at that time, 15 years in the past, now 20 years in the past, trying to put together the kind of pieces of the investigation, which a lot of it were missing, and a lot of it was a sloppy investigation, which made it even more difficult because, if they'd just done this, we would have known that answer. If they'd just done this, we would have known that. It was pretty clear after listening to it for a while that from a pure legal standpoint, they did not have a case that was strong enough that should have been able to convict him, especially a 17-year-old tried as an adult, which is another topic. But there was a big open question about whether or not he actually did it. And there were several things that you'd kind of go down and finish one episode and you think, oh no, he didn't do it. He clearly didn't do it. It had to be someone else because of this, this, this. But then the next episode is like, well, wait a minute. If that's the case, he had to have been involved. He had to have done it. It couldn't have happened any other way. And I just was convinced that I could solve this mystery. I could figure this out. And I kept doing it by kind of coming back to the things that I know. Okay, well, we know this. And if we know this, then that means, and we also know this. And if we know this, then that means, and yet every time you'd come back and you'd think you'd know something, they'd pull the rug out from under you and they'd say, aha, but here's something you didn't know, and you'd be all messed up again. And at the end of the 11-hour, series, the result is, who knows? I tell you that to tell you this. I've kind of felt that way a little bit about church these last several weeks. Since Michael has been back from sabbatical, I feel like maybe his faith is a little shaken, or he's just kind of been reading too many books. But we come in here, I think if you're like me, you come in here looking for, some certainty, some stability, something that can kind of, you can, put your foot on and go back out and face the week. And yet what we've been getting has been a lot of, at best, uncertainty. We've been taught about doubt and how important it is to doubt. We've been taught about living the questions, that we should seek to try to find these questions, and there's no real good answers, but we just need to keep questioning. The world is imperfect. There's imperfection everywhere, imperfection, we shouldn't expect perfection. So there's doubt, there's questions, there's imperfection, and it just kind of leaves me, like listening to that serial podcast, wandering out at the end of church service, kind of feeling the way that I felt after the podcast. No certainty, no foundation, and just kind of more questions than answers. And yet what we learned from the scriptures this morning is what we know about God is plain. Eternal power, divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. Known, plain, clear, understood. Now that's a theology that I can get behind. So, as you'll become painfully aware over the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm not a preacher. I'm a lawyer. And in my practice, when my clients come to me, if I left them with more questions than answers, I'd be in trouble. So today, instead of questions, I give to you the answers. Sometimes I forget that we are a growing church with an online presence and audience, and maybe not everyone knows who I am or my relationship with Michael, so I thought I would take a moment to explain to everyone. Michael is a good friend of mine. I enjoy his questions. I like, having theological debates with him, and so my tongue is planted firmly in my cheek here, just in case you don't know. Because there is something he is correct about. We have a lot of important and difficult problems that face us, as a society, but as a progressive congregation. We talked about how 20 years ago we decided to become open and affirming. Almost seems like a simple time now, thinking if the biggest problem we have was should we let someone who clearly loves someone else of their own gender should let them do that. It's and yet the struggles we had with that, and now we're faced with what do we do with adolescents that want gender affirming surgery? What about trans women that want to compete in girls' high school sports? How do we as a global superpower react to violent oppression of people in other countries? How do we keep our neighborhoods safe from crime and violence, while at the same time recognizing and holding accountable law enforcement that can sometimes themselves be part of the problem? These are questions that we wrestle with, especially as we're coming up to political season, and they're problems that we need to kind of discuss and think about as a progressive congregation. But if we don't do that from a position of, okay, here are some things that we know, then it's just difficult to kind of keep a foundation that we can make good, solid decisions. Or as Paul said in Romans 12, if we are to be transformed, if we are to be transformational thinkers, we need to continue to prove the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So to face some of these mysteries and to solve some of these problems, I've come up with three truths. Three things about the nature of us, of God, and of this life that we can cling to. Truth number one. It says here, pause to allow everyone to get their pens and pencils. Truth number one. People are generally inherently good. This doesn't mean all people, doesn't mean all the time, it doesn't mean we all make good choices, it doesn't mean all our choices are good. It does, it's an affirmative statement about just kind of inherentness. And I'll tell you how I know that this is true. Molly, my oldest, who's off in college now, when she was younger, we went to Chipotle. We went to Chipotle in Lee Summit on 291. I don't know if you've ever been. But anyway, we got our order, and we generally don't drink sodas and things like that, so we just ordered water, and they give you a couple of cups because the soda machine isn't there behind the counter. It's around the corner, and you go and you fill up your own sodas. And as we were doing that, filling up our free cups with water, Molly said, "What's to stop us from just taking soda? Like we didn't pay anything for it, but we have these cups, and we go around the corner here. We could just take soda if we wanted it." And I said, "Well, do you want to take soda?" "Well, no, we didn't pay for soda. That wouldn't be right." And I'm saying, aha. The good people at Chipotle know something that we at Southwood can learn. People are generally inherently good. I showed the pictures of these animals caring for other animals outside their own species for a reason. So scientists legitimately struggle with why this phenomenon happens in nature. It kind of goes a little bit against the concept of evolutionary survival of the fittest. The bedrock core principle of that notion is that animals will make decisions based on their wanting to survive, wanting to kind of progress their own progeny. They take care of their own kids. They want to be the one who's got the biggest, brightest feathers so they can mate and they can continue. And that's kind of the concept. And when you spend time taking care of someone that is not your own child, you are sacrificing food, resources, time. You might put yourself in a position of danger to predators because you are taking care of this other. And so it really kind of goes against the notion of survival of the fittest. And so I think what I'm trying to get at on this thing is that I think where the scientists struggle is what we all know inherently is that taking care of others, especially children, is something that we all just know is the right and the good thing to do. As scientists progress with their ability to study animals, one thing they've found is empathy and emotion, especially among the kind of higher level mammals. Dr. Mark Burkhoff is a professor and author of numerous essays. about animal rights and conservation says, non-human animals are amazing beings. Daily we're learning more and more about their fascinating cognitive abilities, emotional capacities, and moral lives. We know that fish are conscious and sentient. Rats, mice, and chickens display empathy and feel not only their own pain, but also of other individuals. Charles Darwin himself wrote, "There is no fundamental difference between man and the higher mammals in the mental facilities." So what if the explanation to the love one species shows to another is as simple and plain as the fact that as living beings, we desire to love others and we desire to be loved. And when we desire to love others and we desire to be loved, it leads us towards a path of goodness. And when they study these animals, and they're studying empathy, and they've got ways to do this, it's fascinating stuff. One thing they found when they were looking at chimpanzees was that the chimpanzees that had the most friends also had the highest level of empathy. Empathy wasn't something that was just static. You could learn it, you could develop it, and the more friends a particular chimpanzee had, the higher his measure of empathy was. And it leads me to my second truth. In case you put your pen down. When we work together to look after one another, especially those less fortunate, we all do better. When we work together to look after one another, especially those less fortunate, we all do better. When I first came to the United States, I'm from Canada originally, I was a trumpet player. And I flatter myself, as all trumpet players do, I was a good trumpet player. And one of the first things they made me do when I went to university down here was to walk out in the middle of a field and play while walking around. And I thought it was an extremely strange waste of a perfectly good piece of music and a really good trumpet player to spend my time wandering in this field. But now that I've had 3 girls all perform in marching band over the past 6, 7, 8 seasons, you really see that when they all wander in the field together and they work on doing it at the right time with the right motion, with all their flags going and their costumes, it transforms the music from something more than just what it was if you were sitting playing it in an enclosed space. And so while the music itself may be technically suffering from people wandering around, the musical experience is transformed and it becomes something greater than the sum of its parts. It's more than just a bunch of kids walking on a football field trying to remember their parts. It becomes a wonderful performance that is really, really fun to watch. And this is proven mathematically. You may have seen the movie Beautiful Mind. It outlines the story of a mathematician called John Nash that kind of developed what now we know as kind of game theory, but he did studies in game theory that really kind of were really new at the time, and to overgeneralize dramatically. What he proved mathematically is that when we cooperate with mutual concern and trust, it leads to better outcomes for everyone. So if we're all competing for the same one goal, we all miss that goal, we can fall short, or only one achieves it, everyone else fails. But if we all kind of work together to try to kind of accomplish something for the group, it's better for the group, leads to better outcomes. So it's a mathematical truth that I'm telling you here. You can also see it in economic history. My name's Adam Smith, but I'm not an economist. I did take economy for a while in college. And one thing you learn about is there's periods of great inequality in income and in wealth. And in those periods, the economy doesn't do as good as when there is less inequality, which is, kind of weird. So if you go back through time, and history, inequality was kind of the name of the game for the longest time. You had kings and queens, and they had everything, and then you had all the serfs, And even as we kind of came through that, we come through the industrial age where you had your Rockefellers and your Murrays and all these kind of Gettys and all these kind of great things that had all this money, and we named all sorts of things out of them, but we had hundreds and millions of other people who struggled and died in their factories as they were trying to get this stuff going. And really kind of almost accidentally, when we had the Great Depression, one of the things we did in the United States anyway, was experiment with an economic experiment, essentially, of helping the poor. So they'd lost a lot, the rich had lost a lot of their wealth during the crash that precipitated the Great Depression. But everyone was struggling. And so the government kind of turned its attention to, we're going to do things to elevate and help the poor. And with the help of labor unions and others and giving those power of collective bargaining, we kind of developed what became the middle class. We lifted swaths of people up from poverty and elevated them to an economic status, which wasn't necessarily grandiose, wasn't necessarily, everyone wasn't now Rockefellers, but it lifted them to a level where everyone had at least a subsistence living, could make a living, could live in a safe environment, could have a house, could go to college, do the things that we do. And the result, not predictably, but what happened was we became this huge, giant economic juggernaut that was an example for the world, because we had everyone was now kind of participating in this process. And as we learn, the things we learn is that when we're working together like this, even accidentally, even if we're just saying, oh, everyone's hungry, let's feed them, but what turns out, everyone gets better, and we become, as a society, a better place to be. And perhaps the best way to say this is, each of us has gifts and talents, right? We know that, we're preached that all the time. We should have gifts and talents. But if we are struggling to eat or we're struggling to live, those gifts and talents don't come out. And so instead of having a group of people where the gifts and talents of these few well-educated, well-off people are the ones that we have, and everyone else's gifts and talents are lost in the sludge in the pool of just trying to get by, we miss out on all this opportunity that we could have by taking advantage of the gifts and talents of others. And the story of John Nash, if you've seen the movie, is really a remarkable example of this, because he himself had tremendous mental disabilities, had schizophrenia and others, that gave him difficult times socializing and getting on with others, in a time where maybe a few hundred years earlier, he would have just been dismissed or killed or let to just, go off on his own, because he was not someone like the rest of us. He wasn't strong, he wasn't a warrior, he wasn't helpful in society in those kind of traditional ways. But instead, he becomes a Nobel Prize winner, and the fruits of his discoveries are now used in negotiating wars and taking care of complex kind of network transactions. I mean, there's all sorts of applications to his game theory discoveries. So by helping each other, especially those less fortunate, you can see how it creates a situation where everyone does better. Which leads me to truth number 3, or as some people might like to refer to it, the last one. Truth number 3, we each have this one life. We each have this one life. I'm not going to debate or talk about, reincarnation or multiverses or whatever else you want to think. Those things all may be, we all have our own beliefs, we're all entitled to them. But the point is, the thing we do know is that we have this one life. And when I think of having, of the one life that we all have, I like to look to inspirational figures. And so one person I really like and admire is a kid named Matty Stepanek. If you remember Matty, do you know Matty Stepanek? He was a boy who was born with a very rare muscular dystrophy. Not muscular dystrophy, a rare form of muscular dystrophy that was genetic, and he was the youngest of 4. His 3 older siblings all died of the same thing that he had, and he was not expected to live, and he did not live. He died when he was 13 years old. But during the time when he was alive, he wrote multiple books of poetry, became a very famous speaker, spoke to groups about his poetry, but about peace. Peace and justice were his big kind of things that he went for. And I always I'm fascinated by individuals who have some type of illness, who put their passion behind not that illness, but something else. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you always hear about a famous athlete or an artist whose child turns out to have autism or cancer or whatever, some horrible stuff, and they will start a foundation for autism or cancer or whatever, and they'll speak and they'll try to promote and fundraise for that thing, which is all perfectly laudable. But I'm fascinated by the notion of someone who has this horrible, debilitating disease that they've seen ravage his family, take his older siblings from him, and know will ultimately take himself. And instead of saying, I know, I'm going to go raise money for this and awareness for this, he says, for me, what's important is peace, and I'm going to spread peace. I want to read you a little bit of one of his poems. Peace is possible. Make peace an attitude. Want it. Make peace a habit. Live it. Make peace a reality. Share it. Peace is possible. Make peace matter. Our matter. Make peace a priority. Our priority. Make peace a choice. Our choice. Peace is possible. I got the opportunity yesterday to visit with my friend Maggie Chase. Some of you know Maggie. She often sits over here. Maggie's had a profound influence on me. She's been very influential in my life. She's another inspirational figure. Not only is she a great person, comes to church, is friendly with everyone. I mean, if you know Maggie, you know she spent a lot of, at least her second half of her life, working at REAP, Raytown Emergency Assistance Program, helping those who struggled with food to eat or pay their electricity, utility bills. Spent tons of time with them, volunteered tirelessly, hours and hours on end for that. Just touching so many people's lives. And I bring her up in the same way I bring up Maddie Stepanek, because sometimes when I say we each have this one life, that seems limiting. It seems like we have, this limited time where we can have this limited ability to make a difference, limited ability to be transformational. And yet, people are not. It's not a limiting thing. You think how many people knew of Maddie Stepanek? There was nods around here. I mean, there was a kid who was maybe famous for 3 years of his 13-year life. It made a tremendous difference. His poems have been, have been converted to song and have been performed by orchestras. He's an inspirational figure. Imagine Maggie, just one person who she helped feed, whose now children were nourished and were able to go to school. They've grown up, they've had children, etc. It's a sort of thing that goes beyond just one life, because it's not just, we have one life, but we each have one life. And if we each spend our lives trying to kind of touch and reach and do good for other people, then that spreads exponentially. It spreads exponentially not just through now, but into the future, children's children. So saying that we have just this one life is not intended to be a limiting thing, but it is a limitless thing. It extends beyond time, it extends beyond our physical abilities, it extends beyond our particular circumstances. The one life that we each have, if we live it for others, if we continue to strive for good, to give love and receive love, can really expand not just amongst ourselves and our friends and our families and those we touch, but then beyond to who they touch through time and time eternity. All because inherently in each one of us is instilled the desire to love and be loved. And how can you not be in awe of the eternal power and divine nature of God being clearly understood from what he has made? And this is really the truth about the transformation of our minds. And with these truths about the good and acceptable and perfect will of God, we can tackle difficult questions because we have a foundation of truth. So if someone tells us we can't just give money to the poor because people are bad and they'll do bad things with it, well, we know better. If they say we can't let trans kids play in sports they want or go to the bathroom they want because people will cheat and they'll lie and they'll take advantage, we know better. If they say we can't trust women to make choices with their bodies and their children because they're selfish and they're lazy and uncaring, well, we know better. And if they say all policemen are corrupt and racist and we need to just root them out and find justice by stopping to fund them and pay them, we'll get rid of them and find another way. We know better. And when people say we are bigger, we are stronger, we need to impose what is right with violence over those we disagree with. We certainly know better than that because we know the truth and we stand rooted on the foundation of these truths, that people are good, that together we can solve problems we don't even know exist today, and each of us has this one beautiful, limitless life in order for us to be transformed and to transform others. Let us pray. Gracious, eternal, limitless God, may our minds be transformed by clinging to the truths that you have shown us of our abilities to give and to receive love, to help one another, to pass this to those less fortunate so that we may all succeed and that we may use this life not just for ourselves, but so that we all may find the one true and perfect dream of God. Amen. There are two kinds of aggression that scientists kind of identify. One is reactionary aggression, how we respond to negative stimulus if someone, hurts us or attacks us or comes at us. And that's something that has been studied for a long, long time because it's relatively easy to do because you can, prick someone or give them electric shock or what have you. But proactive aggression, the idea that you would, go out and do something to hurt someone else to benefit yourself is something that's difficult to study or has been. And they're making progress in studying those kind of stuff. And what they've discovered is in studying of prisoners and those who have committed violent acts, they've determined that in many cases aggressive behavior may be associated with decreased functioning in orbital and dorsolateral prefrontal cortical areas, and increased functioning in medial, temporal, especially amygdala, brain regions. Importantly, the relative balance of activity between dorsolateral, prefrontal, orbital frontal, and limbic brain regions may be important in predisposing to violence and abnormal processing of emotional stimuli. Now, I don't know what most of those words mean, but basically what academics have found is that there are biological abnormalities that can contribute to someone saying, hey, I know I only paid for water, but I'm going to take soda. And unfortunately, others studying childhood trauma have found that children who experience prolonged periods of stress, physical or sexual abuse, malnutrition, neglect, during their formative years of brain development, develop these very abnormalities in their brains that lead to proactive aggression later in life. So just as love and cooperation lead to better outcomes, injustice, inequality, persecution can lead down dangerous roads. So after all of this, I keep going back to the animal's strong motherly pull to take care of children in trouble. And the simple answer is that if we take care of those less fortunate, those vulnerable, especially our children. And so I encourage you today to consider how you will use your one life to help someone else, especially a child. Because when you're able to do this, we make the world better for everyone. It's the best and simplest use of our efforts, and that is the plain truth. Thank you. Go in peace.